Hello and welcome to another episode of the TMB podcast. Today, we're featuring someone who we've been excited to see for a long time. This person is one of the most talented, insightful, and grounded individuals that I know. Today, I'll be speaking to this person about his experiences as a police officer in national service. My name is Ashraf, and I'm pleased to welcome our special guest for today, Zaki.
Hello everybody. Hello. Thanks Ashraf for having me over.
Hi, Zaki.
I
Thanks
appreciate
for
it a lot.
finally coming on the podcast. I know you're a very busy man, so how have you been recently?
I've been doing well. I've been busy in studies, and I just managed to finish a few assignments and a few milestones in my education. So now I'm slightly more chill, but then it's the calm before the storm, they say.
That's good to hear. So, shall we just get into it?
Yes, let's go.
All right. So, today we're going to be talking about Zaki and his experiences in national service as a police officer. So, but before we get to all that, let's dial it back a bit, bring it back to before you got into the police force as a national service officer. So, before you got into NS, when you found out that you were going to be enlisting to the police force, what was your reaction like?
I can't really recall because that it's been about almost 10 odd years or more. Anyways,
years.
I did recall being somewhat intrigued and excited because it's something that is different than most people who will go through the military, go through the army, like being sent to the police force. So that's probably a different set of experience because I think in popular culture, in local popular culture, we know about like the grueling training in the military, but the police probably back then it wasn't really as well known. So it was something new, something exciting.
I mean, for me, also I can say something similar that probably didn't know much about going into the police force because I remember that when I got the letter saying, "Oh, you're going to be enlisting into the police force," I was like, "Oh man," it wasn't really a surprise to me because I had two cousins who had also gone to the police force and another one in civil defense. So I was like kind of expecting to go either one of these two places. So my mind was already like mentally prepared that I was going to be in the police force or civil defense. So I was like, okay, another one in the police force in this family.
Because for my brother was actually sent to the army. Although he didn't go to Tekong because like I think back then there wasn't any Tekong when he was around.
Oh, that must have been a long time ago.
Yeah.
Okay. So like before you enlisted, right? Did you hear any stories about how training will be like in HTA, like from seniors, from friends? Do you have any conception of what it would be like in HTA?
I think there's a misconception of some sort that the training will be less grueling because it's I don't know why, because it's the home team instead of the army, and also they say that you also need to be trained for like patrol duties and like discharging your duties as a police officer. So that will involve like hitting the books and training in upgrading your competencies as an officer. So it's slightly different than just maybe doing physical. It's more than just physical training alone.
I mean, I heard somewhat similar things to you. Like, one of my friends described it as like a holiday resort compared to the army or civil defense. Like, HTA, yeah, you go there, it's like a chalet. You just sit down there and relax the whole day. Like, you go for lessons for your law, and like most of your day is spent in an air-conditioned classroom looking at a screen.
Yeah, that's kind of true, but I mean,
it's a reductive statement, but it is what it is, right?
Yeah.
So, like, again, were you apprehensive or nervous about any sort of training that you might have potentially received in HTA? Like, were you scared of anything before going in?
I think other than the natural nerves of like embarking onto a new phase of life, I think back then as a naive JC kid, I was probably excited excited that we'll be doing this thing, as well as probably on the back of my mind, like get this over and done with, because to me, like going to NS was like a side mission because I was planning to go to university after the completion of my NS.
Yeah, as will be. So like it was just like I need to go do this, and then I'm gonna do it as best as I can and get out.
But I wasn't too nervous, other than the normal nerves that are associated with trying something new, going somewhere that your family members or your close friends also together going through with you, right?
Yeah.
Like we also had many close friends who are also going
We're
through
all
NS.
together in
Yeah,
one
yeah,
batch. Yeah.
you were my friend. Yeah, you are my friend.
Oh, okay. Good to know. Thank you. Yeah, so I think that for me, the most daunting thing was firearms training because I was like so scared. I've never had a gun in my life, and before NS, obviously. And I was like, how is this going to go? You know, like I'm so scared of, just the weapon itself. Like, this can kill someone,
Mm.
And it's like, so that was the training that I was most afraid of. And probably the second one would be physical training because I wasn't a fit kid at the time. And I was like, I have to spend 2 hours a day running and doing all the other static exercises. Like, it's going to be hell. And somehow I enlisted earlier than you with the 8 weeks of additional fitness prep.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, firearms. I think maybe back then, when controlling a firearm, controlling a revolver is actually in a very controlled setting. What was scarier was hearing stories from our friends in the army with the grenade, because the grenade I think has more room for
There is a lot more risk compared to it.
screwing up. Yeah,
It's a lot more
I mean
risk.
the gun, as long as you face it towards a certain direction, the bullet will hit that direction. Just don't face it towards any of your body parts.
Yeah, I agree with that. So, and finally, before you enlisted, do you have any expectations about how you'll be living in HTA for the entire week on weekdays?
Probably just being very busy, running around like what you say, going, and especially since I went in without the 2 months of pre-physical training, so it'll be slightly what's the word, expedited. They had to move things fast because like you need to be competent
It's very
enough.
condensed, I would say.
Very
for
condensed.
you, because everything has to happen in 4 months.
Oh yes. 4 months seems like a short time, but
But
it's a long time.
It seems like a long time, but based on the amount of training and learning that had to be done, it's not that long actually.
Yeah, exactly.
So, moving on, right? Can you tell us about your enlistment day itself?
The enlistment day itself, I can just recall snippets like woke up early with my family, then we head over to the training center. Then I remember getting the cameraless phone because back then you can't bring phones with camera in. Then after there were ushers here and there like bringing leading you and your family around. Then suddenly you split away from your family. Then you're shuttled back and forth to different stations where they do checks, and both admin and physical checks. Mm-hmm. Then I recall that you have to take the pledge. I also recall that they also give you the free hair. Oh, I don't know whether it's free or not. The haircut, yeah.
It was free.
Oh yeah, okay.
It was free, yeah.
And I recall how breezy my head felt. Like, it's like, where's my hair? Then I look at my own shadow. Then I was like, who on earth is that guy? Oh, it's me.
Yeah, I think having a bald head for the first time was something like really, really unfamiliar. And then like, why do you have an egg on my head? Like, it feels like an egg, Where's my hair?
It's so breezy though.
Yeah.
Maybe I should adopt it soon again.
So moving on from your enlistment day to your confinement, which is the first 2.5 weeks. So were there any culture shocks that shook you when you were there for the first 2.5 weeks of confinement?
Yeah, I think just the transition from post A-level life, where I was just basically chilling at home almost every other day and playing the computer games, to a very regimental training, like being shouted around, being ushered here and there, and also doing a lot of physical training, something that I wasn't used to back then, especially. Yeah, so that is something new, and especially like sharing a very common bunk room with so many people you are not familiar with. Also, that's something new.
Okay, so out of all the aspects of regimentation that they implemented in HTA, right, which was the aspect that you found it easiest to get used to or acclimatize to?
The easiest is having a very tight schedule. Like at time point A, you have to be at a certain place at a certain time. At time point B, you have to go there. So you don't need to think too much in where you have to be. So you just have to follow the timetable and then be there when you need to be.
So you fell in love with the order of things happening there.
Yeah. Beside all the chaos, there's that order.
Okay, then what was the most difficult part of the regimentation that for you?
think one of it is like you have to, the durations are sometimes fixed, so sometimes you end up waiting for no reason or waiting for things to happen, which can be very annoying.
Yeah.
And also another thing, I think military and all regimental training has its own logic, has its own like way of thinking, that some people, they try to rationalize, like say, or they try to say like, why can't we do it this way? Like we could have done it this way because it's simpler, because it makes sense to them. But then they have to realize that regimental training does not care about your opinions. That you have to follow the rules and principles and the standard operating procedures that it has. Yeah.
So I guess what you're trying to say is like there's a trade-off between efficiency and uniformity.
Yeah.
In the sense that we do what is required of us in as a squad, as a group of people together.
Yeah, you need to conform to the
Yeah.
system. I mean, you can talk elsewhere about trying to change the system, but when you're in the system, especially the training part, just do what you need to do.
Yeah, I
Don't need
think
to
I've
think
heard
too
more
much.
than my fair share of murmurs in HT of people wanting to change the system. Like, why do we have to do this? Why can't we do it like that? Like this kind of thing. Like this rule is so illogical. I'm not gonna follow it. This kind of thing, you know.
Yeah, but then you're gonna invite trouble not only for yourself, but like your fellow squad mates or your fellow even your direct superior, like your fitness instructor, because sometimes they also follow it accordingly to what has been done. Yeah, so that's a little tricky. I think some people find it very hard to wrap their head around that there's this logic beyond them that they have to conform to.
Especially if they were living like a carefree lifestyle, like how you described you were living post A-level pre-enlistment. Yeah.
Yeah, I think also it's like just basically ego versus the system lah. But the ego has to yield to the system.
True. So what did a typical day in HT look like for you?
Typical day.
Yeah.
Wake up early, very early before the sun rises. Yeah, and then have breakfast, then take the pledge. And of course you have to move from location to location in a squad, so you have to march together and stuff. Then there's the normal classroom, where you learn like different laws that govern police powers, different laws that govern police procedures. Then there's also different trainings, like you mentioned, firearm training, physical training. Usually, I think the good thing is they have the physical training either like before breakfast or in the early morning or evening, so that the sun won't be too hot.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I actually
There
appreciated
was a
that.
rule that I remember that between 11 and 4 or something, you're not allowed to have any training in the stadium because of the heat.
Yeah, I appreciated that. I realized that.
Anyway, you can't have training because you would be in the classroom anyway.
Yeah, so at least there's something to do. Yeah.
Because for me when I enlisted 2 months earlier, our training was primarily, of course, obviously, it was focused on physical training. So there'll be physical training twice a day. One is in the morning before breakfast, and then there'll be drills the entire day, like learning all the drills. And then in the evening again there'll be physical training. So running became like a very, very normal thing. Like every morning, okay, you can expect to run at least 6-7 rounds around the stadium. Then evening again, you run around 6-7 rounds around the stadium. Like it became a typical thing, a typical activity for every day. So, and also the one thing that I couldn't get used to initially was water parade.
Yes.
Water parade, like I never understood the logic of waking up so early just to drink water and then waiting again for the next activity to happen. It's like, why do you have to wake up at 5:30 just to drink half a liter of water, and then wait for the next activity, which is probably the pledge taking assembly. So that was something that took time for me to process and understand.
Water parade. Yeah, that was fun. Just gulping down half a bottle. Gosh.
So just now you mentioned about your physical training. So can you tell us more about how intensive it was for you personally?
I think it's quite intense, because I wasn't very very physically inclined back then as now.
No, but you were in the fit batch.
That's because I passed the NAFA test. Yeah.
So you're already quite physically inclined.
It just so happened that I happened to pass the NAFA test. And anyways, it was pretty tough, because like what you say is pretty condensed 4 months. Then we have to basically be in a good fitness level to carry on your training, or else like if you don't pass the IPPT, you may the fitness proficiency test, you may need to train even more. So, but I was lucky that the squad that I'm in, the group of recruits that are in, were very driven. Then,
Wasn't your squad like the one with the most number of goals?
yeah, I think so.
I remember your squad had one of the highest rates of goals or passes or something.
Oh yeah, so they were actually very driven to like go that run beyond just the normal mandated training sessions. Also like we were led by a fitness instructor who was very new to who just started his vocation as a fitness instructor, so he was quite driven to make sure that his first squad is a good squad.
He wanted to make a good impression.
Yeah. And maybe it's his first time on the job. Then I think it's more less jaded, more passionate. I appreciate them helping out.
What were your favorite and least favorite activities in HTA?
Favorite and least, I mean the whole
Like
experience.
out of all the activities that you did in HTA, which one's your favorite? Which one's the least favorite?
I think like it's usually the trainings that we have to go to a different vicinity. Like for example, we have the firearms training. Then they usually have instructors that are trained for firearms. And the instructors there were quite a nice bunch of instructors. They're very friendly. They like to crack jokes here and there, but they take their job seriously, and they gave a lot of like tips and advice so that we can improve our accuracy and precision in shooting. So I really appreciated that. Then there's also like, for example, the situation based training in SBT, where they have like environments of different contexts, like a HDB flat or a police counter. Then it's basically like role playing, where you also have your fellow recruits, like they pretend to be like a person complaining or a criminal. Then you have to intervene, and then they will assess you based on like how you manage the situation. Then that's a bit of fun, because sometimes if you are picked as the role of the criminal,
you want to make life hard as possible for your
no no, not really, but I do enjoy like just doing something slightly different than just running around and stuff. So like those are the few things that I enjoyed when I was training.
Alright, Zaki, so let's move on to the final question for this segment. What was the vocation that you ultimately received when you were graduating from HTA?
So I received the vocation as the ground response officer. So in essence, it's the officers in blue that patrol the streets as part of the neighborhood police neighborhood police center. So it's like when you think about police, that's the first imagery that popped up. So I was basically assigned as that duty.
What was the name again? Ground Response Officer.
Ground Response Officer.
GRF, okay.
GRF.
All right, so now when you receive this vocation, do you have any expectations about what a GRF officer does before beginning your actual shift work?
So in essence, yes, I just basically maintain law, respond to 999 calls, as well as try to deter crime. So basically patrolling in the streets.
Yeah, but I'm sure that before you are able to be deployed on the ground, you must have had to receive further training in order to specialize you for this role, right?
Yes.
So can you talk more about that training?
So basically, I think it's more or less the same than the previous training, but just more in depth, like the exact police powers and how you can respond. And also they give like, like we always encounter like a similar kinds of cases. So they make us do a bit more role playing to get us more familiar on what are the powers we can enforce during those different scenarios. So that was actually also quite helpful.
So do you have any difficulties or any toughness in learning the rules of a GRF officer in that quick time frame that they expected you to learn it?
Yeah, it's around 3 months, but I think it was a little rushed because additionally we also had to learn how to drive. So I had to condense and we had to learn how to drive a manual car. So
And your driving was not part of the curriculum? Was it separately?
yeah, it's separate. You have to they will shuttle you to the driving center, and then
The one at Ubi, is it?
the one at Ubi, yeah, and then you will assign then you have to do those things and then go back to the camp and continue your training and so on.
So your driving lessons were in the evening towards the night? that
Yeah,
kind of time.
usually towards the night, yeah.
So it's quite a tough day for you. After learning the whole day, still got to go learn driving at night.
Just a long day. But they also planned the curriculum such that you will have driving at a certain time, then the law training at other time. Yeah.
All right. So now moving on to when you were deployed as a ground officer. So do you want to share about any common misconceptions the public has about GRF officers that you yourself personally experienced?
I think there's a lot of misconceptions. Firstly, I think the public thinks that anything that goes wrong, you have to call the police. Like sometimes we don't handle all cases. Like if it's like a minor dispute that there's no violence involved. Usually there's either mediation there's other ways to resolve it instead of bringing police into it. And minor things like if you get locked out of your house or that kind of thing, you don't need to call the police for that unless there is life at risk then you need. So not everything you have to call the police. So use the 999 wisely.
Wait, did someone really call you because they were locked out of their house?
Yeah, something like that.
Oh
but
my God.
we access that there's no danger to anyone. So
how do you
they
assist that
should
person?
so we advise them to engage a locksmith.
Okay. I thought maybe you break the door down for them or something,
I mean, there was a case sometimes. There was one case when a parent accidentally locked the child inside the car. Then that's where we have to step in. Then we give the firefighters the permission to break into the car to rescue the child. Yeah.
So that was more of a firefighter's job, not a police job.
Yeah, but we are there to keep the peace as well as to ensure that the situation is under control. So when there's a danger of life, danger of damage to property, then police presence is important. I mean, it should be warranted. But sometimes there's also if you think that there are possibility of something escalating towards violence, I think that's also fine to call the police, because different cases. And also a misconception is that the police can do anything, like arrest anyone that someone suspect to be of wrongdoing. Because I think in the Criminal Procedure Code, which dictates police powers, there are some offences that are arrested that you need to arrest on the scene. There's other offences that are not arrestable, and we are also bound by the law, so we cannot do anything willy-nilly, or else we have to report to superior, and we are bound by the legal constraints, so we can't just do anything you want us to do.
I've heard this anecdote from another one of my friends. This individual called the police because someone else insulted that person, and they wanted the police to arrest that person who insulted them.
That's slightly ridiculous. I mean, and that kind of case, if you want to settle it, you have to go to the courts, engage lawyers, and it will be a purely civil matter.
Yeah, because there was no violence involved.
No offences disclosed. Yeah.
Yeah, just verbal jousting.
Yes.
All right. So, are there any cases that you were particularly proud of that you assisted or investigated as part of your GRF duties?
So, just a couple of cases come into mind. There's one case where an employer reported that their receptionist wasn't coming to work. Then he suspected that she usually comes to work every day, so suspected that something was wrong with her. Then we just went to the house, see that everything is locked and all the doors and windows are closed. Then we thought that maybe she went off somewhere, but one of my colleagues, he didn't have a good feeling about it, And also like when we interview the neighbors also haven't seen the lady left her house because she was a widow. Yeah. So we talked to our supervisor. First, our supervisor thought that maybe she left the house, and we did our due diligence of like checking around. But then we got the permission to break into the house and realized that she was actually she had suffered from a stroke and she was laying unconscious in her bed. I can still remember, and I can still remember entering the house and like trying to help out.
So
And
this was like discovered after a few days after she
no,
had a stroke?
so it's just a few hours lah. So thankfully she was alive and well.
Okay.
And like I was very grateful for my colleague for both of us. We had like a uneasy feeling that day, but when because it took over like a couple of hours to like we have to interview the neighbors and interview the employer and discuss with our supervisor what is the right course of action. Then we managed to argue our way to break into the house.
Okay. Any other cases?
There's also a couple of cases where we encounter people just leaving the vicinity having committed shock death. Then sometimes I think it's human nature that you will kind of give like signs that you may exhibit signs that you have committed a crime or
Like body language.
body language.
Okay.
Then I remember just me and my colleague just walking in the shopping area, the vicinity. Then we saw a couple of people just making like a very obvious U-turn away from us. Like we saw them seeing us and then trying to evade us, and then we stopped them, interviewed them, then realized that they have committed a shop theft offense. Then we went over to the shop and checked that these items were from the shop. So cause like I still remember like the persons had like a bottle of milk and it was cold like from the fridge. Then we were at the central area. Then like I said like where do you get this milk from? Then he said like all the way from Pasir Ris. Then we were at Bedok at that point, so like how do you get the cold milk?
Why would you bring milk all the way from Pasir Ris?
And how is it still cold? You must tell me your secrets. I need to know.
Okay.
But yeah, so other cases are like that. Like the cases slowly evolve. Like you find some evidence, you pick up certain signs that maybe people are not telling you the entire story. So sometimes it's helpful to interview different people that are involved in the case, and sometimes you have to make the decision or discuss with investigating officers. But those are quite interesting and quite an eye-opener.
I think this is where your training differs from mine, because for me, if I recall correctly, we were trained to recognize body language a lot. We were really a lot of lessons dedicated to recognizing body language and movements that would hint towards a certain offense being committed or a certain crime about to be committed. Because we do not carry in my vocation in SOC we do not respond to all incidents. We only respond as a last resort.
Your vocation is like essentially the riot police, right?
Yes, the riot police. So we only respond as a last resort. We are not deployed like how you are deployed for almost every case that is being called into 999. So when we are the last resort, we need to make sure that we can assess the situation even better than how the first responders assess situations. Because usually when they call us, we are already short of time. So we need to know what we can as fast as we can. Yeah. So I think that's where we differ in our.
I think it's also important historical context that we were actively deployed like in the wake of the Little India riot. So maybe your training had to be heightened, and I can tell that the general police organization was a little uptight. Like there were, cause a major event that just happened in the country, and then
Right.
then like there are a lot of checks to ensure I think checks beyond the regular checks to ensure that everything is in order and that we were doing our due diligence in discharging our duty. So maybe that's why you're
Yeah, because like I remember, for example, one of the first things that I still sticks to me today. Like whenever I enter a room or enter a enclosed environment, like the first thing I look for is where's the exit.
behind you.
Like,
You
you know,
just
like
enter.
where are all the points of exit? You know, like there's like it just comes naturally nowadays. Like if I enter a shopping mall, like okay, this is the exit here, this is the exit there, there's the exit there. Okay, there's a potential way to get out here. This kind of thing, you know, like where are the blockades or where this kind of thing, like
I think
scenario assessment.
I think basically
It's like kind of ingrained into your mind. Like
there's this saying in police called assess the situation. AOS.
yes,
Or is it
AOJ or something, assessment of jeopardy or something like that.
assess the situation. So like every case is different. Then like sometimes being familiar with the environment or knowing where are the different things that can be done, like maybe for in your case especially, it's pretty helpful.
It's helpful, yeah. So can you share with us any lessons that you learned during your time as a GRF officer?
I think one of the bigger lessons that stuck to me is like it showed me like the underbelly of Singapore. Like I think most of us, especially back then as a JC kid, probably we had a different image of Singapore being like a city that is very that is very advanced, very modern, that everybody has reaped the benefits of like globalization and all those and all the global thingies. But then you realize that there are some people that are left out in the community that are then maybe that's why they're involved in petty crime. Maybe that's why they are entrenched in a cycle that is very hard for them to escape. And back then I was mainly going through like the education system that is pretty, in my opinion, very sheltered. I interacted with people who are like-minded, people who think the same way as me, but being in national service, both when I was in the training and being actively deployed, I see a different side of Singapore that I was quite shocked or surprised to see that there are people suffering or people in such conditions being in Singapore. So that changed my mindset of how we view ourselves as a nation. Because like there's I just lost my train of thought.
It's okay, take your time.
So like when sometimes people say, oh, Singapore is very safe, or Singapore is not safe, or usually people will say Singapore is safe, then
Yes.
I can't help but roll my eyes a little, because like maybe because it's the environment, you mainly stay in an environment that is secure or very supportive, but there is another side of it that you may not know, that there are officers as well as other different frontline vocations that are on the guard to ensure that everybody is well and the peace is kept. And also maybe another thing that I learned to be very diplomatic in what I say. So like because like what you say, especially to members of public or to people attending a case, especially when their emotions are usually very high, very you enter a case, a 999 call. Usually there are people already shouting, there are people hurt, there might be, sometimes can get a little gory or little out of hand. Then you can't expect people to rationally say, oh, thank you, officers, please have a seat, we are currently discussing how to handle our situation. Or people will just shout at you when they see so when you enter a situation in the blue uniform, you have to be able to like command their respect, as well as to say things that will help to de-escalate the situation, and ensure that cooler heads prevail. So with that, I learned that words can really matter, how you say it to people, and just being more. So in the end, I learned to be just more diplomatic, and like, oh, there's things that you can say to make someone feel better, to make someone feel worse as well. So it's just working on that.
Yeah, I think that's a very good skill to have in general.
Yeah. I mean, working with people is a lifelong skill. It's a lifelong work in progress. Eh?
Exactly. So, one of the things that I've always wondered about GRF officers, because I've never had this experience, is that how do you keep the emotion out of your cases?
You have to take like each case one step at a time. You cannot. I think you cannot like really how say it, like just delve into a case for too long until like it it until it kind of affect your mental train of thoughts, and also maybe the nature of the job. After you handle a case, if you are lucky you get a few times to a few moments to rest. If you're unlucky, another 999 case will call, or your colleagues attending another case might require assistance that you have to rush into. So it's, I like to say, the whole duty, whether it's night or morning duty, is like a different peaks of adrenaline. So suddenly I'm just chilling, like I'm thinking like, I can have roti prata later during supper or breakfast. Then suddenly like, we have to rush here, somebody needs our assistance. So like, then you suddenly, I still remember there's one time when, although this is slightly sidetracking from the question, like I remember just waking up from a nap. Then suddenly we are informed that there's a case, a housebreaking case, because there was a serial housebreaker. Then like he struck at our vicinity. Then I remember being drowsy, and then my colleague, my superior officer on the car, we just sped all the way to the scene, and then everything in the car just flew around. My logbooks and my bag was flying all over the place. And I was trying to freshen up my face so that I'll be ready to attend to the case, because there'll be the people who call the 999. So that was just a fun ride of like being in a quick change of how say of moods and vibes. Like suddenly you're chilling, and suddenly you have to be on your feet.
Yep.
So I think with that, like the case after case, you kind of like, it also takes your mind away from the previous case. And so for certain cases, if it's serious or anything, there's always like after action review that we will sit together and discuss. We could have done this better. Like we did this well, so on. So but I think, and also another thing is that you have a little faith of how the system works. Like sometimes you feel that something is a different way from the legal process, but you hope that the legal system will iron things out. Because the police, as the blue, you're just there for a short period of time. You're not, because like there's also like post investigation, then intervention cost measures to help out. But usually we are there for like the first few moments. Like we also have like members of public who has been in cases before approaching us, like, saying how's the case, like you attended or your colleagues attended a while back. And like we can't say much, because like usually it's handed over to the investigative branch and so on.
Okay. So, next question is, do you have any regrets in any cases that you've attended?
Any regrets other than a couple of cases of people running away and I wasn't able to catch them? Not that much regrets. The only I think there's just a couple of sad things, like what I say, seeing different families in different when there's cases of like family dispute, then you can see that this won't turn out well for either party. Then you see that there are kids involved, in like very young, like sometimes walking up to you, very short. I mean, I'm very short, so they're really shorter, and then you can imagine in your head like, this may not turn out well for them, and I think it takes someone with a lot of resilience to go through these kind of things. So I always think about like how I worry a bit about like, we are there for just a short period of time, and then like this kind of cycle of like disputes and like this kind of social cycle that you see, then as an officer you see like people in different stages of that cycle. Like you see family disputing, you see kids either playing truant or like doing like not kids like hanging out and doing like silly things, although them kids being kids. Then you see at each different stages of the cycle is slightly heart-wrenching to say the least. But so that's why if you can, you should advocate for you should always volunteer and help out people who are more vulnerable. Always look out for more vulnerable people around
That's
you.
some good advice. Right, so speaking of the kids who came up to you and the members of public who asked you how is your investigation going on, so I want to ask you about your interactions with members of public in general. So in your experience, how do the members of the public respond to police officers when you're doing your routine ground patrols or when you're doing investigations or after you've completed a successful investigations? Can you share some of your experiences with these interactions?
Some people can be a little annoyed, like when we do like routine checks. But then usually they end up being okay because like we usually inform that we have to be professional and inform that we're just doing our job, and then if you have nothing to hide, we can make this fast, and we also don't want any trouble. As long as you say that you have nothing on you, that you're fine, then you're good to go. Some people you can tell that they are appreciative of like of our presence around. Then that's quite heartening to see. Sometimes people acknowledging our presence and acknowledging our small contribution. Sometimes there's also the odd parent that says, "Oh, careful, the police are here."
They want to scare their children to behaving, right? Yeah.
But that's a slightly not a good mentality to have, because you want kids to
Respect the police, not fear the police.
not be respect, of course, but not be afraid. Yeah.
Yeah, don't
So
fear the
if
police,
if they got lost and they see an officer, okay, let's go to this guy. Please help me. Go to this officer. Please help me. I'm lost. That kind of thing. Yeah.
All right, on the final note for this podcast, are there any mentors or supervisors that nurtured you or motivated you or pushed you into becoming a better police officer?
When I was a GRF officer, I was in a part of a team of regular officer, full-time officers. Then they all were very supportive, because most of them are either on different stage of their careers as police officers. And it's probably the first time that I actually hanged out with adults, because usually most of my friends then were just JC kids and stuff. So then I see how they interacted with one another, how they also have other major concerns like their career progression, their family, and so on, which also led me to think about that of my own, and also brings things to perspective. Also, like, they are very helpful in like ensuring that I get the things done well, and also advising me on like different things to do. And they're always looking out for me lah. Like, I think there was one incident when I happened to be alone. Like I think because we were slightly separated during a operation. Then I encountered somebody suspicious. Then I approached them. Then through the radio system, I informed that I am interviewing this person. Then on that moment, all the officers in my team basically converged towards me. I get 2 cars came towards me. My partner, who was also slightly somewhere else, then immediately ran towards me. Although it turns out that the guy was just they had no offenses. He was just being a little funny at a wrong place at a wrong time. But yeah, he was fine and everything was fine. But it was nice to at least know that you have in the police team, you have these colleagues who you can trust, who you can learn from. So that is quite heartening to know. So,
all right, with that, we've come to the end of this episode. Thank you everyone for listening. Thank you, Zaki, for being here. Goodbye. See you in the next episode.
Bye. Take care.